I want to talk to you about Pisces men. I think one of the things that is most important when we do a deep dive is understanding what category of Pisces first. So Pisces as a whole, I'm going to go over it in another video. But in this one, I'm going to list down below the categories, but I'm going to be going over, according to the decan, that a little bit more descriptive about them. So the female is a very different creature. We're going to be focusing on Pisces men. And it goes as follows. Let's first talk about the Aquarius Piscean cusp. This type of individual has a very difficult time adjusting to outside of them. So it's not their internal feelings and emotions and headspace and all of that they go through that is difficult, but instead it's, projected into their environment. So their social life and how that affects them internally, and their work life and romantic life and family life and so forth, right? So in this particular case, there's a mixture of like what stresses them out internally by themselves, within themselves. They're very cool. It's just, and very chillaxed and everything with their internal space. It's with outside. So there's a lot of chaos there. So if you're dating one, right? Because this is, I'm a love astrologer and I do tarot love readings and that's what I focus on. So this is more of a romantic angle. This is the type of individual that they struggle a lot with who they hang around, with who they are around. They're usually very drawn to cuspers, anyone that's between has this weird dichotomy between two identities with the zodiacal, right? So like I said, cuspers to cuspers is what this person, is drawn to naturally. Anyone that has just one linear way, one approach. So let's say like the second decan of a sign, which has more purity, there's gonna be more chaos. Now, let's say that you're very attracted to one, or dating one, or married to one, or you're trying to find out, what's going on with this person at a deeper level. I would say that their imbalance and their stress is going to come from their outside environment. They have these ideals. They want to project what they believe onto them. So they have a very hard time adjusting. And I would say that this is where the chaos comes in. So if this type of individual, kind of stresses you out the way that you are, if you can tune certain things out, this is going to clash right away. That's the first thing. Let's go ahead and, of course, I'm going to do a deep dive on all of Pisces, but now let's take a deep dive into the first decan of Pisces. Let's take a look at a Pisces level 1. A Pisces level 1 is struggling with a lot of sensitivity and being misunderstood. This is the type of individual that's going to be more impressionable. So let's say that you are a really hardy earth sign. There's going to be frustration here. You're going to have a difficult time understanding their language. Sometimes earth and water clash. They could be drawn to each other in certain ways, but we're talking about, in the sun space, the sun sign space, sometimes in the rising as well. Moon, we'll get into a different territory, but I would say, that if you're very structured and, you're not as dreamy and you don't get caught up in all of that, I would say that you would have a difficult time with somebody like this if a Pisces level 1. So a lot of times they are led by their emotions into certain types of behaviors or bad habits because of this overwhelming feeling, right, that they can have. Now, the second thing is, so I just want to point out another important thing is that they're very aware of other people's feelings. A Piscean 1 will go around, with a very caring nature, and this can also collect and be overwhelming as well. All right. Let's go to the Pisces level 2. Now, this is I guess what you would call a true Piscean energy. They're all Pisces. But the second decan usually is the purity of a sign, whereas there's little changes and wiggle room as it starts going to the next sign over. So every time you get like a third decan, you're getting, they're not cuspers, but it's almost like certain traits are becoming washed out with you know, the third decan of a sign. Whereas the second, it's the purest, it's the strongest of that sign. One can find, you know, partial identity within that sign. So in this particular case, a Pisces level 2, they're very drawn by the emotion of the moment. So that's Tara, my cat meowing. They're very swayed by, for example, music, art, very temperamental. They'll go into phases and things of they're into reading or writing or things that really draw them. Maybe it's movies, and then they, you know, it's not that they collect, but they get pulled into these subjects for these phases. So if you are bored by things, or you don't really have an attention span for things that take a lot of detail, you don't really easily get immersed into things, this can frustrate you, right? Let's get into Piscean level 3. So Piscean level 3 is going to be overwhelmingly preoccupied with social friendships and the connection. So remember, we're talking about the male. Very different creature, the female. Just wanted to remind you of that. So the Piscean third decan, a Piscean 3, there is, you know, there's this weight that's put on with the social life. What I mean by the weight means the heaviness, the care, the focus. You know, that it's this person's very like, you are who you hang with kind of thing. Well, that's the truth for everybody, but in this particular case, it's like they're very impressionable, so they're going to kind of reflect, you know, their environment and who they're with. So this is exciting, but I think it would take a more sensitive, you know, patient sign to connect with a person like this romantically, because they're so variable, and they are also preoccupied so much that they can kind of like immerse themselves in other people's issues. So this is overwhelming as well. Sometimes they don't know the boundary line to stop. So there could be this kind of like parental, you know, double checking on this person. So the female could kind of have to take on an extra, besides wifey title or girlfriend title or fiance title, they're going to have to be like, kind of like intervening, and it's a task. So if this is daunting to you, this would drive you nuts. And if there's something very heartwarming and you can handle it with no problem, because maybe you grew up with like a bunch of brothers or something like that, this would be your cup of tea. So and they're sensitive and, you know, very, very interesting, you know, individuals. Now let's go to the last part, which is the cusp, where they're dipping a little bit into Aries energy. And here, one of the biggest problems is impatience and the struggle to make things done, because they're an enigma into themselves, right? You know, the double fish and the ram. So remember that the ram's always ready to go, and they don't stop for instructions, and they could mess things up because they're just go, go, go. And the fish are swimming opposite in directions, so they can contradict themselves, and there's this push and pull energy. So this is a tough one, because this one has no patience. This one is easily annoyed, and they kind of make up their own rules as they go. They can feel, you know, claustrophobic. So this is someone who's kind of adventurous, can deal with this kind of thing, and someone with a lot of like get up and go pep can handle this type of Pisces. All right, so we'll get into deeply Pisces in the next video series, where I cover all the zodiac signs. All right, guys, bye.